Good morning, everybody. You guys in the room are often the invisible leaders. What I mean by that, as the CFOs or the finance directors of an organisation, you often take second base to the CEO or the board who claim recognition for most of the achievement. But without the platform of what you represent, they wouldn't be achieving. But there's more than what you are. You have to unlock your humanistic 360-degree potential. So what I'm going to do right now is I want you to forget all the smarts you've got in your mind. We're going to go back and we're going to do a little bit of magic to start with. Now, can you hear me at the back without that speaker? Is that clear enough? Okay. I want you to look at me. Two hands, nothing between. There are no props, anything. Watch very carefully. Do not try to do this unsupervised. I do not want anybody making a compensation claim for physical disability. Okay, just watch carefully, pay attention. There are no props, there's nothing behind. I'm just going to turn my back, two hands separated. Ta-da! Look at that. They're joined, they're linked. Have you ever seen that? How brilliant is that? But look, there's a bit more. If I turn around, unlocked. How good was that? I just got the same reaction that I got from my wife 20 years ago when she said, "That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen." My interpretation of that, because I needed to maintain some self-esteem, was she wasn't ready for that yet. It was too sophisticated. The world hasn't been ready for CFOs yet, but your time will come. Now, I practiced this joke, or this trick, 2 weeks ago on my almost 3-year-old grandson. He was blown away. I thought, I'm playing with the wrong audience. He went and showed his mum because he picked up the trick. I showed it to him. I did a little mini workshop. I showed it to him. And he thought that was the best thing. We often forget there's a little child inside of us. And that child wants excitement. He wants fun. He wants to enjoy what he does. I bet if I asked most of the people in this room whether you've got the best job on the planet, yeah, you'd probably try to pretend you thought you did, but I bet you don't. Well, I believe in a world where you should all have the best job on the planet. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about somebody who's made the best job on the planet in a different way. As CFOs and finance-minded people, if somebody said to you in a 3.5-year window, they added $250 billion worth of financial wealth, you'd have to agree with me, that'd be a pretty astounding outcome. Yeah? I'm talking about Satya Nadella. Some of you may have picked up the story globally. This guy took the job nobody wanted. Why? Because Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer built the giant Microsoft organisation. But at the time in 2014, when Nadella took control as the CEO, the hedge funds who'd put billions of dollars into invest in that company wanted an outsider. They wanted a tyrant who could turn the company around. Why? Because it had lost market position, it lost a lot of share price value, the products were becoming irrelevant, the phone apps were starting to take hold and outdo Microsoft's relevance. So this guy, who'd been working for the company for 15 years, an insider, that all the big investor groups and institutions said, oh, if somebody's got to have it, maybe just give it to him because nobody wants the job. Nobody really wanted that high-profile job. And you just heard what I said he did. How did he do it? He didn't do it by replicating the dictatorial, very, very strong-minded values of Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer. He attributed his acclaim to his young son who had cerebral palsy. And he said, my focus was on how do I make a better life for my son? So I put myself in my son's shoes and thought, what would give me a wow factor experience? So what he did, in understanding that, and in today's business world, we use the language of design thinking. That's exactly what design thinking emulates. Go to the customer end, figure out what they want as a wow factor, and in the term of customer, I'm talking about every stakeholder. Some of you have internal customers that you serve within your organisations. Some of you deal with the outside customers. Build the profile of what you're offering back down the value chain and put a wow factor in every piece of it. If you did that, every person in the organisation runs a job they love to have. So what Nadella did, he went to his leadership group in his organisation and said, I want you to read a book. He gave them a book about non-violent communication, all about empathy and engagement and collaboration. And they realised at that point that they weren't going to have the same Microsoft as what they had previously. This then spread through more than 120,000 employees. Why did he do it? He realised the untapped potential of a soft style was more engaging, and soft styles mean there's not one size that fits all. Every human being has a special need. So if every person in the organisation recognised every other person's need that they interacted with, maybe we would make a better place. What does that achieve? Creativity. The only way you get to reclaim a position in the business world is to be creative. And that's why this is important. And so, getting out of your comfort zone, doing something. Do you think I like doing that magic trick that my wife said was the dumbest thing on the planet? I did it because it's my test of getting out of my comfort zone. Do something that's really going to alarm people in your game. And we all need to do this from time to time. So having said that, let's get on with the show. Okay, the I Ching. Some of you have heard of the I Ching. It's not just a book in a new age, fancy lifestyle situation. This is the oldest book about change. There are seasons. The weather changes. There's a good time to plant crops. There's a good time to have certain types of interactions. When we deal with people, you don't try and have a heavy-duty conversation about something with somebody in a bad mood. They've already shut the shutters before you can open the door to an open idea. There's a nice saying that goes here, and this was done by Alan Watts, who actually transcribed the ancient Chinese text, written some 5,000 years ago, they believe. But he came up with this: the only way to make sense of change is to plunge with it, move with it, and join the dance. Many of us try to resist. We in the conservative profession of finance like to hold on to our security blanket. Most of you would admit that you took the career you're in because you felt it was a guaranteed meal ticket. There are no longer any guaranteed meal tickets. And disruption is simply another word for change. And let's just follow it through further. Disruption means opportunity. How you use the circumstances of disruption to create something much, much better. Uncertainty and volatility, you see it every day now. Jobs are changing, the market prices are changing, the dynamics are changing, the politics are changing, the length of tenure of politicians is changing, footy coaches are changing, everybody wants instant results. But this requires failing fast and not being afraid to fail. Failure is simply a definition of the pathway to learning how to win. and yet most people stop at the failure as the end result. Build on it. Technology. We've just heard a little earlier that there are some things coming about. Artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, all the new applications on the planet. If I went to China, there are a number of Chinese people in the audience. Many of you will have heard of the application WeChat. They call it the Facebook of China, but it's a lot more than Facebook does. It's a life management system. There are 1.4 billion people in China. Do you know there are 900 million active users every day of a phone app? And it's just not social connections. It's entertainment, it's education, it's social streaming, it's financial management. It's a complete management tool. They don't use email as much as we do. They use WeChat to do everything. They don't use credit cards as much as we do. They use WePay, which is an integrated app with WeChat. And on WeChat, there are more than 50 million users who are designated seniors, double the Australian population. China has seen a way to take its position in the world as utilising enabling technology, and everyone's got a mobile phone these days, whether they're wealthy or poor. So they've used the mobile phone as the stretch and reach factor to get to people. Equality. We hear so much now about gender equality, racial equality, all these things. They'll be around for a while and we'll get the recipe right in the future. If we just act like human beings and treat everybody equal, there's not much more to it than that. But you know how many billions of dollars are spent worldwide on politically correct policy about trying to encourage people to get it right? And I use the word encourage deliberately. Encourage actually means bring about courage to do something. They're not encouraging, they're mandating. That's not a good way to be what Steve Ballmer was to Microsoft. Nadella worked out that let people make their choices and work as they need to work together. There are different generational aspirations. We heard earlier from our earlier speaker. The millennials have a different view of life to the rest of the baby boomers or the Gen X. The Gen Ys and the Gen Zs, a long-term career is 3 to 5 years for them. For the baby boomers, it was a whole of life type mentality. They don't desire to have absolute financial independence the way baby boomers did. They'd rather follow a cause or a purpose. And this is a clue as to how you manage a millennial. Give them something to believe in. Give them something to say, we belong to this cause. And they'll forego the financial rewards to be part of something bigger. Have you ever noticed how crowdfunding takes gravity in the marketplace these days? When we opened the Optus Stadium here, there was a streaker. You know, he crowdfunded to pay for his fine. It didn't take 24 hours for that. Do you know the things like cryptocurrencies today? You know China banned it? In 24 minutes, $2 billion was raised across the internet. 24 minutes. This is changing the finance world. China outlawed it because suddenly they realised there's a power change in how things are regulated, etc. And you know where most of that take-up is coming from? People under 35 years of age who are digitally connected. So that's a new piece of information that the capital markets world is starting to pick up on. Evolution of employment. We got the gig economy. What we had as traditional, you are employed part-time or full-time, is changing to no time and virtual. All these things are changing. Ageing populations. The wealth is changing between the ageing generations and moving. Who are the customers? Where is the money? You can't run business unless you know who your customers are, who can pay for what you offer. So this dynamic is testing the minds of the financial decision makers to gear up with the strategic decision makers about where do we pitch and position our businesses. And the financial markets what they call the democratisation of finance. No longer do people just want to work in a world where you have real estate as security and that's the only way you can offer security to a bank. If you're a tech company like Microsoft, you don't go and put up your building as security to borrow money to expand your company. No tech company has the capacity to do that. That's why initial coin offerings and the reach of the digital marketplace is transforming the way these things work. Interestingly, banks with their fiat currencies don't want to miss out, so they're also moving into the digital currency playground covertly. So, how are CFOs going to cope with all of this and more? You've got to reorient your responsibility. And that means your ability to respond to changing circumstances. You've heard of IQ, you've heard of EQ. You also need the AQ. The AQ is your adaptability and your flexibility to respond to whatever takes place. You need to become change leaders. You are in a position of high influence. People listen to you because you are able to quantify the impact in the measurable language of finance. But you must also subject yourself to continuous learning and creating value. Nadella didn't go out and single-handedly change Microsoft, but he was the absolute catalyst that led to a transformation in a record-breaking time. There have only been 4 people on the planet who have achieved what he has done real-time today. Okay, your transformation of thinking. This is the start of your soft skill reformatting. Everybody looks at your performance, and if the performance is not right, they try to change the performance. Let's go back down the value chain of where it originates from. Everything you do in thinking affects your emotions. Your emotions, good or bad, affect your behaviour. And your behaviour relays your performance. So if you want to reset the boundaries, go back to your thinking. What are your values? What's important to you? How do you reinterpret what's taking place, etc.? Now, let me just take a sidestep for a minute. We'll go into microbiology just for a second. And I'm not a microbiologist, so I'm going to give you a layman's version. Back in the 1970s, a Dr. Perth did a lot of neuroscience research, and she worked out that your brain creates peptides. Peptides are things that sit on receptors. Receptors sit on your blood cells. In your blood cells are little filaments and roots that come from the receptors. And they worked out that your brain communicates with your cells. But they also worked out with subsequent research that your cells communicate to your brain. And so they now talk about the body brain, not just the brain being a standalone device for calculating and interpreting. Well, the amazing thing though is that every day 2% of your body cells change. You lose them and they're replaced. Over 50 days, 100% of your body cells are changed. And the startling piece of that research said, at the time of replacement, if you are thinking happy thoughts, the cells are, or the peptides are replaced with peptides that replicate the departing ones. If you are thinking depressed and negative thoughts, you are replacing it with those. And this is why people often say take 30 to 60 days and you can create a new habit, or you can change a habit. This is the scientific explanation of why people talk about these sorts of things. So go back to your thinking, think positive thoughts. If you think positive, you enlarge your world with that. If you think negative, you innocently impact your world with more negativity and depression. Connectedness. Unless you want to be the sole person on the planet doing everything yourself, you need to have what we now refer to as ecosystem relationships. You need to look at every category of stakeholder that has a role to play with you, and you need to build relationships to bring them alive. So some contemporary dynamics. Truth. People want truth and transparency. You've just seen with the Banking Royal Commission. You've just seen with the Child Abuse Commission. People want to know the truth, as painful as it is, and they want something done about it. That's why you've got people trying to get blockchain up and running. Take out all the middle people that can fudge the records, manipulate the records, or change the outcome between a transaction between a buyer and seller. It'll get there eventually. Authenticity. They want the EQ component. They want you to be genuinely human, not say what they think you want to say because that's what they want to hear. Be genuine. Ethical challenges. Learn to do the right thing. It's pretty basic most of the time. Your values tell you what are the right and wrong things. And yet business is a world where there's still mentality out there in some places that if I can get away with it, let's take it while we can. That's all changing. That's not a long-term sustainable way to build trust. Stress impact. This is a big problem, biggest disease on the planet. With all this uncertainty and volatility, it stresses people. You've got to figure out how to work with it. Now, firstly, accept that stress is a good thing. It actually brings out the best in you if you apply yourself to it to find a solution. Do you know there are 1 in 4 people in the workforce in Australia suffering stress, anxiety, depression, and other registered areas of those things? There are a lot that have not registered in your organisation. Now, I'll tell you a funny story about stress, the dumbest thing I ever did. I was on a plane one day coming from Beijing and I had to stop over in Singapore, so I had 2 hours between flights to get back to Australia. I do what typical people do when they get off the plane. They rush, they can't wait to get their phone switched on, get the Wi-Fi connected, download their emails and make as many calls as they can before they catch the next flight. I'm sitting there at a cafe, I'm making a call to a client and I suddenly had an anxiety attack. I said to the client, look, I've got to go. I've lost my phone and I can't find it. So I hang up and I start to look around and I look at my hand and there's the phone and I thought, my God, what have you done? I ring the client back and said, can you forgive me? I don't know what happened. I said, can we just keep this between us? By the time I got back to Australia, more than 20 people knew the dumbest thing I'd ever done. But you know why he wanted to tell everybody? He said, I want to know that you're prone to making mistakes and you're a human being like everybody else. And if you can turn it into something humorous and you can laugh at yourself in the mirror, you can never go wrong. People will support you. So don't be afraid of trying to be too perfect in your world. And there's a lot of that. This next one is mind-blowing, engagement at work. You know the Gallup organisation did a global research, and do you know how many people are actually interested in their job globally or engaged in their job? Truly, 13%. Australia is the star performer in that Gallup research. We modelled 24%. Wow. So you mean 1 out of 4 people in our organisation really wants to be there. The rest are not interested, headspace somewhere else. They're not going to position the company. I'll tell you what, that's frightening. And if you are in a leadership position, how are you going to know which ones are which? And if you don't know, it's your fault. You must learn as a leader to know your people and engage with them. Managing people is what makes the difference. Now, we have somebody in the audience today, and I won't embarrass him. His name's Marcel Wilson. He's written a brilliant book on frontier mindset. It's all about change leadership, and he's got a great quote that he puts there. When as a leader's passion for learning is combined with a strong sense of purpose, he's unstoppable. So get that purpose out there and become alive to engage your people to drive that purpose. Nurture their talent, inspire creativity, encourage them to get out and have a go. Don't get them to copy your formula or what you do. Get them to individualise what they do, because only they can be their best. Encourage collaboration, break down the barriers. On this, there's another story that was picked up worldwide by Elon Musk just recently. He said, if you want to make a difference in your company, sack all the managers. The Gallup Research Organisation did a research back in the 1990s, and they said the biggest problem with companies is the movement of people. People leave companies because of the direct correlation of the bad relationship most of them have with their managers or their supervisors. And in a communication world, managers block the communication. It's got to go up to them for approval, it's got to go to the manager on the other silo, and then back down to the people who can actually do something about it. Elon Musk said, it's time to have lattice work relationships instead of hierarchical ladders and silos. So he jokingly said, get rid of the managers. Funny thing is, he is getting rid of the managers who block the way. And anyone in his organisation of Tesla, if they discourage or block communication or performance, they're out of there. Motivation. I know this is hard for accountants to swallow. You are actually meant to motivate people. How are you going to motivate somebody if you don't love what you do? If you aren't passionate about what you are doing in the organisation? People need examples so that motivation becomes the right tool and they get on and do what they have to do. If you don't know much about motivation or it's out of your comfort zone, find a mentor, get to work on it. It will make one of the biggest differences in your organisation. Use people's strengths and take up a mentoring 360-degree thing. Encourage everybody to have a mentor somehow in their life. And you as the senior decision maker, you need to have mentors too, because you don't know it all. Continuous learning. Create a culture of continuous learning. Frightening statistic. If you look up Google and ask how often does it take for knowledge in the world to double, the answer today is 13 months. So we put people in our profession through university degrees that take 4 years, 5 years and more with postgrad studies. By the time they start their course, the syllabus is 5 years tested, 5 years old. Then by the time they finish their course, everything is ancient history. So continuous learning has got to become an absolute element of your life in an organisation, but you've got to do it daily and in bite-sized chunks. You haven't got time to have a sabbatical every day and take 90% of your day learning, but you do need to focus on what you want to learn. My suggestion, though, is there's so much content and you already have a lot of technical understanding. Start putting a lot of the learning into your soft skill capability, the things you need to work with there. For personal developments, get your character fitness best example, be the best you. And start to work on storytelling. Storytelling is the best way to leave a message in the mind of the audience or the person you're dealing with. I have a lot of people who give me a lot of technical input, and I think unless I'm a technical mind, I might as well talk to a computer or have a computer listening, because most of the technical language is so technical that you're trying to strip out the technical so you can figure out what the true message is. It's like somebody swearing in the sentence and using 10 swear words, and there's only 3 words that actually got a message in there. They've amplified it with descriptives. We tend to over-describe technical things. Dumb it down so everybody gets to understand what you're talking about. These are your essential attributes that I think the modern leader needs, whether you're in finance or not. You've got to have the right attitude. You've got to have an attitude of anything is possible. There are no limits. You've got to be open-minded. You've got to welcome challenge. You've got to be a warrior of uncertainty and volatility. You just got to get excited when you know something's different that's going to challenge you. Psychologists tell you that a challenge is actually the first seed of motivation. So give your people challenges. Let them test their capability to fulfil the outcome. Don't give them the answer. Have a clear purpose. There are organisations around the world now. There's a company called Patagonia. Patagonia is a very successful South American company where they actually have a very, very strict purpose about everything's good for the environment, everything's good for the people that consume their products. There are other companies that Queensland University has surveyed that anyone with a very clear purpose and vision, they are able to put financial metric association to it and have shown in their research that they outperform other companies by a factor of more than 30%. They weren't focusing on the bottom line, they were focusing on getting a purpose that people would resonate with as to why they would come and do business with them. The bottom line just became a byproduct of good purpose. Equanimity, calmness under pressure. You know when you have one of those crisis days and somebody just drops a bombshell on your desk and you go, oh, we're all doomed. That's what I see in my life. A lot of people go, oh, what are we going to do? You have to just take a breath, calm down and go, oh, how good is this? Wow, I get a chance to be creative. I get a chance to test what I think I'm all about. If you're 80 years old and you thought this way, you'd think you were 20. Put the youth back in the old formula of accounting. Be the important people that drive people to want you in their world to help with their businesses. Engage, and this is a problem for the millennials. They all walk around like this with a mobile phone. They bump into each other occasionally on the street. Hi, good, back to the phone. You see them in a restaurant. They're actually 6 people on a table, 5 are probably on mobile phones while one guy's just waiting for a space to talk to somebody. And he's the one who's got to pay the bill because the rest are all filled up. We've got to get the millennials to break out of this. They are the best technology enabler and utility managers. But business is done with people who make decisions strategically, dialectically, and engage about the best way to position an organisation. So you've got to encourage them to build their humanistic skills as well as their technology competencies. Empathy, understand them, and empower people, give them trust. Just on trust, most people go, oh no, I couldn't trust them to do that. That is a load of cods. The people who say that need to look in the mirror because they typically don't trust themselves with temptations. Put some discipline in your life, put trust back into your own world and start trusting others. I like this saying, life's deepest meaning is not found in accomplishments. In other words, if you haven't got the results, you're not awarded the acclaim. It's about how you deal with relationships. So here's your big picture. You may not be able to see all the words from back there, but 360 degrees. Have some good values, ethics, culture and purpose. Build that as your framework. Have your financial platform. That's a given. Start to embrace the technologies that allow you to do better at what you do. Start to look at the industries that you are involved in, whether you're in government, not-for-profits, corporate enterprise, SMEs, whatever. It's all relevant. Adopt a continuous learning strategy for yourself and all those that are part of the game. Start taking risks. I know you're a conservative profession, but balance it a bit. Start having input into the risk-taking agenda. Start creating value. Start dealing with people. Get out from the books, get out from the computer, get out from the desk, and only ever see the CEO for a briefing. Engage broadly. Develop yourself personally, and now become a really good change leader. And there are many more. But here's the Holy Grail. If you are not healthy, if you are not a balanced individual, how are you going to accomplish all those business things. You've got to be happy. I deal with a lot of wealthy people. I struggle to find a happy one amongst them. They're so insecure about somebody taking their wealth off them, or worried about the kids losing it all if they hand it over to them. There's got to be more to life than just holding on to things that are precious collectibles. Happiness is an inside job. Be happy. Instruct yourself to be happy and enjoy the moments of challenge. Exercise, sleep and nutrition are very important. Sleep is a big issue for people today. If you don't sleep, you're not rejuvenating your physiological systems. That is your refresh time. And a lot of people wake up in the middle of the night sweating with a problem that's in their in tray. Stop doing business after 9 o'clock at night. Don't go to sleep until an hour after you've stopped engaging in problem solving. Don't play with the computer before you go to sleep. Give your brain a chance to relax so you can be calm. And eat healthy. And stop being workaholics. Balance a few of these things. And walk, do something you enjoy, but move. Big problem with older people is they stop moving because the excuse is they're old. Move. I've talked about your cells replacing themselves. Think positively. Don't worry about how it works, just think positively. Meditate. Find 5 or 10 minutes in a day to sit quietly, undistracted. Just relax and let yourself chill. So, in final, the real focus is build your personal capability. I've got here become a 3% leader. That's because the Gallup organisation says globally there are only 3% of the business world who have natural ability to be leaders. I've also seen later research which says people aren't born to be the only leaders. People can evolve to be leaders. It's a question of how they think and how they bring this into their new world. If you build on that, you've got the ability to deal with all the disruptive issues. And as I said earlier, disruption is nothing but opportunity for you guys. Having said that, thanks again.